Amara Ndiaye stepped out of the car, excitement bubbling in her chest as she looked at the sparkling entrance of Lake Tanjiri Resort. At 19, she had been looking forward to this getaway for months. Her mother, Fola, adjusted her scarf, smiling nervously, while her stepfather, Bakery, walked slightly ahead, his expression unreadable. The sun glinted off the polished floors, guests chatting and laughing all around, the scent of fresh flowers and sea breeze filling the air. Then, without warning, Bakery's hand shot out. The sharp sound of a slap echoed across the entrance, and Amara felt her cheek burn. Time seemed to freeze. She staggered back, her heart hammering, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Guests nearby went silent, some staring in shock, others quickly lowering their eyes, pretending not to notice. "You think you can talk back to me?" Bakery snapped, his voice sharp, public, accusing. Such disrespect. Amara's mind spun. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the polished tiles beneath her feet, but she couldn't. Every face around her seemed to weigh down on her, some in judgment, some in disbelief. Her mother stayed frozen, silent, unable to move, as if the world had swallowed her words too. Tears stung Amara's eyes, not just from the physical pain, but from the humiliation, the betrayal, the sheer shock of being struck in front of strangers by someone who was supposed to protect her. She felt small, exposed, trapped under Bakery's anger and the silent judgment of onlookers. And yet, deep down, a spark of something fierce began to flicker. She knew, even in that moment, she couldn't let this define her. Amara stumbled back, clutching her burning cheek, her fingers trembling as tears threatened to spill. The sting of Bakery's hand was nothing compared to the shock that rippled through her chest. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, curious, judgmental, or quietly horrified, and it made her stomach twist into knots. Her heart raced, and for a moment all she could do was stand there, frozen, as whispers and murmurs floated through the air. Around her, guests glanced nervously at one another. Some shifted their weight, pretending not to notice. Some stole quick glances, their eyes wide with disbelief, but no one stepped forward. It was like the whole world had paused to watch her humiliation, and yet, no one would lift a finger to stop it. Amara's mother, Fola, remained rooted beside Bakery, her face pale, her lips pressed tightly together. She looked embarrassed, ashamed, but silent. Amara's heart sank. She had always thought her mother would stand up for her, would protect her, but now it felt like she was completely alone. Her throat burned as she swallowed back sobs. Anger mixed with the sting of humiliation, making it hard to breathe. How could someone hit her like this in front of strangers? How could Bakery think he had the right? And why wouldn't anyone help? She felt a wave of panic, but underneath it, something stronger began to grow, a spark of defiance. Amara realized that crying quietly or running away wouldn't fix anything. Her dignity, her self-respect, demanded more than silent suffering. She straightened her shoulders slowly, trying to calm the trembling in her hands and legs. She looked around, locking eyes with the nearest guests, trying to muster courage from their shocked faces. The whispers continued, but now they sounded different, almost like a backdrop to her growing resolve. Amara's mind raced. She couldn't let Bakery's cruelty define her. She couldn't let this moment of shame take everything from her. Taking a deep breath, she pressed her hand to her cheek one last time, letting the sting sink in but refusing to let it break her. Her eyes met her mother's, silently pleading for support, and then she turned toward the resort's entrance, heart pounding, ready to take the first step toward standing up for herself. She would not be silenced. She would not be humiliated. Not here. Not now. Amara took a shaky breath, her cheeks still tingling from the sting of Bakery's hand. The whispers around her seemed louder now, echoing in her ears, but she forced herself to block them out. In that moment, her father's words came rushing back, clear and steady. Stand tall when injustice hits. Never let anyone take your dignity. His voice was like a shield around her, reminding her that she was stronger than this moment, stronger than Bakery's cruelty. She pressed her hand lightly to her cheek one last time, feeling the warmth of the slap, and then straightened her shoulders. She lifted her chin, letting her eyes sweep across the resort entrance. Guests were still watching, some in surprise, some in silent admiration, but she didn't falter. For the first time since the blow, she felt a flicker of control returning. She wasn't just the girl Bakery had struck, she was Amara Ndiaye, and she had a voice that deserved to be heard. Ignoring Bakery's angry shouts behind her, she took the first step forward, then another, feeling her legs steady with each movement. Her pace was calm but determined, her footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor. She could feel the tension in the air, the sharp glances from guests who didn't know what to do, and yet that only strengthened her resolve. Every stare that had been meant to shame her now felt like a spotlight, highlighting her courage instead of her fear. Bakery's voice rose again, laced with threats and anger, but Amara didn't turn. She felt her pulse racing, but not from fear. This was excitement, the thrill of reclaiming control over a moment that had tried to break her. She reminded herself that he thrived on fear, on seeing her small and powerless. But he wouldn't get that. Not today. As she walked, she imagined her father's proud smile, the steady pride in his eyes. That image carried her forward like a force. By the time she reached the main office, her steps were purposeful, her expression calm, even a little fierce. Guests who had been murmuring moments ago now watched in awe, some leaning closer, whispering quietly to one another. Amara could feel the shift. The moment was no longer about humiliation. It was about strength, about reclaiming her power in front of everyone who had witnessed her being struck. She paused at the door of the manager's office, took one final deep breath, and pushed it open. Each heartbeat was steady now, full of courage. She had made her choice. She would not be silenced. She would face Bakery, face the world, and stand tall. And in that instant, Amara felt something she hadn't felt since the slap, a quiet, unshakable power rising within her. Amara stepped up to the front desk, her heart still racing, but her posture steady. The polished wood felt cool under her palms as she leaned forward slightly, her eyes meeting the manager's with quiet determination. Mr. Adeyemi looked up from his papers, smiling politely, but the moment he noticed the tense set of her shoulders and the faint redness on her cheek, his smile faded. "Excuse me, sir," Amara began, her voice calm but firm. "Something serious just happened. My stepfather, he hit me in front of everyone at the entrance. I need you to know exactly what happened." Mr. Adeyemi's eyes widened in shock. He did what?" he asked, leaning closer. Amara nodded, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the desk. "Yes, he slapped me. Right here," she said, gently pointing to her cheek. It was completely unprovoked, and it wasn't just a private argument. It happened in front of guests, employees, everyone. I don't know why he thought he had the right to treat me like that, but I can't let it go unnoticed. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and continued, recounting the incident step by step. She explained how he had shouted at her, calling her disrespectful, and how her mother had stayed silent, too afraid to speak up. Every word came out with clarity, her tone controlled but full of emotion, leaving no doubt about the seriousness of what she had endured. Mr. Adeyemi listened intently, his brows knitting together as he realized the gravity of the situation. "Amara, I am so sorry you had to go through that," he said, his voice low, almost protective. "No one should ever be treated that way, especially in public." He tapped a few buttons on his computer and called for security. "Let's review the surveillance footage immediately. I want to see exactly what happened." As the camera footage played, Amara felt her chest tighten with a mixture of anxiety and relief. Every movement, every harsh word Bakery had spoken was captured on tape. Mr. Adeyemi leaned back in his chair, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. This is worse than I imagined. It's completely public. Everyone could see it. Thank you for coming forward, Amara. We will handle this properly." For the first time since the slap, Amara felt a small spark of hope. She had spoken her truth, and now someone with authority was listening, taking her seriously. The humiliation she had felt moments ago began to shift, replaced by a growing sense of strength. She wasn't alone, and she wasn't powerless. Not anymore. Bakery's face twisted with fury as he realized Amara wasn't going to run away or cower. He stormed toward her, his footsteps loud and heavy on the polished tiles. "Amara, stop right there," he barked, reaching out to grab her arm. How dare you embarrass me in front of everyone? Amara pulled back instinctively, her heart hammering, but she refused to show fear. She looked him straight in the eyes, her voice steady despite the shaking in her chest. I will not let you hit me again, she said firmly. Not here. Not in front of everyone. I will not tolerate abuse, Bakery. Especially in public. His face turned red, veins standing out on his forehead as he shouted insults, calling her disrespectful and ungrateful. Each word was meant to intimidate, to make her feel small, but she held her ground. Around them, guests began to stop and watch, whispers rising like a tide. Some looked shocked, others curious, and a few quietly sympathetic. Then Amara noticed something that gave her a spark of unexpected relief. People were taking out their phones. Some were recording, capturing Bakery's anger and his failed attempts to control her. Each video, each witness, made him look smaller, weaker, and more foolish. She could feel the momentum shifting. The power he tried to wield through fear was slipping through his fingers. Bakery's voice grew louder, more desperate. You think you can talk to the manager and just... He trailed off as he realized some of the guests were stepping closer, subtly creating space between him and her, their cameras pointed in his direction. Amara's pulse raced, not with fear now, but with adrenaline. Every step she took toward the manager's office was filled with purpose. She didn't flinch, didn't run, didn't beg. She simply moved forward, each word she had spoken earlier echoing in her mind. Stand tall. You have a right to be treated with respect. A few guests whispered to one another, clearly impressed by her courage. Some even murmured encouragements, subtle but supportive. And with every witness filming Bakery's outburst, Amara felt a growing sense of control. She wasn't just defending herself, she was exposing his cruelty in front of everyone. Bakery stopped for a moment, realizing that the public's eyes were no longer on Amara. They were on him. His arrogance faltered as he saw his image being captured in all its anger and shame. Amara didn't say another word to him. She simply walked past, calm, unshaken, and empowered, knowing that the world was now watching her courage, not his rage. Within minutes, 2 uniformed security guards appeared at the resort entrance, their presence commanding and serious. They had seen the tension, felt the unease in the air, and now stepped in to take control. Sir, one of them said, directing his voice toward Bakery, please wait here while we investigate the situation. Bakery's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. He opened his mouth to argue, but the calm, firm tone of the guards left him momentarily speechless. Guests gathered nearby, their murmurs growing louder, some whispering words of support for Amara. She could feel the shift in the atmosphere. Where moments ago she had felt completely exposed and alone, now she sensed a quiet solidarity building around her. You've got this, one older guest murmured softly as they passed, giving Amara an encouraging nod. Another shook their head in disbelief at Bakery, clearly unimpressed by his outburst. Amara's heart lifted slightly. She had felt powerless before, but now she realized she was not facing this alone. People were seeing the truth, and that truth was on her side. Bakery, however, wasn't ready to give up. She's lying, he shouted, trying to regain control, his voice echoing across the lobby. She's twisting what really happened. His words were loud, but shaky, lacking the confidence they had held just moments ago. The guards exchanged a quick glance before motioning toward the security office. We'll check the surveillance footage, one said. It will show exactly what happened. They guided Bakery to wait in a designated area, and for the first time, his arrogant composure began to crack. Amara followed the guard's instructions quietly, staying close but not too close, her heart still racing. As the footage played on the monitor, every motion, every shout, every slap was captured clearly. Bakery's face paled as he saw the evidence. Realizing his lies could not cover the truth, his arms dropped to his sides, the confident mask he had worn crumbling under the undeniable proof of his actions. Guests continued to watch from a distance, some whispering words of admiration for Amara's courage. She could feel their eyes on her, not with pity but with respect. The fear that had gripped her moments ago now felt replaced with a quiet strength. Bakery opened his mouth again, but no words came out. His face told the story his voice could not. He had lost control and the world had seen it. Meanwhile, Amara stood tall, breathing steadily, feeling a mix of relief and empowerment. She had faced the storm and, with the support of others and the undeniable truth, had begun to reclaim her dignity. The tide had turned, and she knew, deep down, that nothing Bakery could do now would take her strength away. Fola's hands trembled slightly as she watched the security footage on the monitor. Each second showed Bakery's outburst, his anger, and the slap that had left her daughter shocked and humiliated. She felt a lump in her throat as she realized the truth she had been too scared to admit before. She had allowed fear to silence her, and now her silence had contributed to Amara's pain. Around them, guests whispered, some staring in disbelief, others clearly admiring Amara's bravery. Fola's eyes shifted to her daughter, standing tall and composed despite the chaos, and something inside her shifted. Bakery's glare shot toward Fola as she stepped forward, finally breaking her long silence. "Bakery," she said, her voice firm but measured, "this is unacceptable. What you did to Amara was wrong, and I will not stay silent anymore." Bakery blinked, caught off guard. "Fola, what are you saying?" "No," Fola interrupted, her voice stronger now, carrying a weight it hadn't before. "I should have spoken up the moment this began. I stayed silent because I was afraid of you, but no more. I am her mother and I will protect her. I will stand with her, not against her." Amara felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with a mixture of relief and awe. She had longed for her mother to see the truth, to recognize her pain, and now it was happening. Fola walked closer to her, placing a gentle hand on Amara's shoulder. "I am so sorry, my dear," she said softly. "I should have been there for you from the start. I promise you, I will never let him hurt you again. I am with you, Amara. Always." Bakery's face went pale, his arrogance beginning to crumble. The control he had wielded over Fola for so long was slipping away, and he hadn't anticipated this turn. The mother he had expected to obey him without question was now standing firmly with the daughter he had tried to humiliate. You can't," Bakery stammered, rage and disbelief warring in his expression. Fola ignored him, her gaze fixed on Amara. She tightened her hand on her daughter's shoulder, a silent gesture of solidarity and protection. Guests watched the exchange, murmuring softly, impressed by Fola's courage and the sudden shift in power. Amara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of being seen and supported that she had almost given up hoping for. In that moment, the dynamics of their small, tense world changed completely. Bakery was no longer the one in control. Fola had chosen her daughter, chosen truth over fear, and in doing so, had given Amara a strength she hadn't known she needed. The woman who had once stayed silent was now a force standing beside her, and Amara felt an unshakable sense of hope and courage rising within her. Mr. Adeyemi leaned back in his chair, his face serious as he reviewed the surveillance footage for the final time. Every motion, every harsh word, every slap was clear as day. He looked up at Amara, who stood quietly but confidently beside her mother, and nodded. "Amara, you did the right thing by speaking up. No one should ever be treated like that, especially not in public," he said, his voice steady but filled with concern. He picked up the phone and made a call, his words deliberate. Within minutes, Bakery was informed that he was being permanently banned from Lake Tanjiri Resort. Security would escort him off the premises, and a formal report would be filed documenting his behavior. The news hit Bakery like a thunderbolt. He had tried to control, intimidate, and humiliate, but every attempt had failed. Now, even the authority of the resort stood firmly against him. Around them, guests and staff began to murmur. Some were whispering their admiration for Amara, some quietly praising the manager for taking swift action. Staff members nodded at her as she passed, some offering encouraging smiles. Amara felt the first real surge of empowerment in hours, a mixture of relief, pride, and an almost electric sense of freedom. She had faced fear, faced abuse, and had not backed down. Her mother squeezed her hand, her eyes shining. "I am so proud of you," Fola said softly. "You stood tall when it mattered most." Amara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but this time they weren't from shame or fear. They were from strength and validation. The guests continued to whisper and watch, some recording the moment discreetly, others sharing approving glances with each other. Amara realized that her courage had inspired more than just her mother. It had touched everyone who had witnessed her standing up to Bakery. For the first time, she truly understood the power of refusing to be silenced, of choosing dignity over fear. As she walked past the front desk, she noticed how differently people now looked at her. There was respect, admiration, even awe. The humiliation she had felt earlier had transformed into something entirely new, a quiet, unshakable strength that came from knowing she had reclaimed her own power. Amara's chest lifted with each step, her heart lighter than it had been since the slap. She had faced fear head-on and come out stronger. For the first time, she felt what it truly meant to stand up for herself, not just in words but in action. The resort, the staff, the guests, they had all seen it. And most importantly, she had seen it too. She could face abuse, speak her truth, and rise above it. She was no longer just a girl who had been humiliated. She was a young woman who had taken control of her life and her story. Weeks passed, and life for Amara began to shift in ways she hadn't imagined. The sting of Bakery's hand and the humiliation at Lake Tanjiri Resort were no longer her defining moments. Instead, they had sparked something powerful inside her, a determination to live her life on her own terms. She stopped answering his calls, blocked him on every social platform, and made it clear to her mother that his presence was no longer welcome in their lives. With each small step, the weight of fear and oppression lifted, replaced by a growing sense of freedom. Amara started to notice changes in herself. She walked taller, spoke with more certainty, and smiled more freely, no longer carrying the invisible burden of shame that Bakery had tried to force upon her. Her friends and extended family began to see the difference too, commenting on her newfound confidence, impressed by the strength she carried in every action. She felt lighter, more herself, and more determined to protect her dignity at all costs. Then, one evening, she made a decision that would change the way she connected with the world. Amara sat down at her laptop and began writing her story, the full truth of what had happened at the resort, how she had felt powerless, and how she had finally stood up to Bakery. She posted it online, unsure at first if anyone would care, if anyone would listen. Within hours, messages and comments started pouring in, thousands of people, mostly young women, sharing their own experiences of abuse, humiliation, and control. Many thanked her for speaking out, saying that her courage gave them the strength to confront their own fears. The response was overwhelming, but it also inspired Amara to do more. She began speaking publicly, hosting online discussions, and offering advice to young women about recognizing abuse, setting boundaries, and standing up for themselves. She encouraged them to speak out, to refuse silence, and to remember that their voices mattered. With every story she heard in return, she felt less alone and more connected to a growing community of survivors. Through it all, Amara realized something crucial. Courage wasn't just a single moment, it was a choice she could make every day. By cutting ties with Bakery, sharing her story, and standing up for others, she discovered a strength she hadn't known she possessed. She wasn't defined by fear or humiliation anymore. She was a young woman who had reclaimed her voice, inspired others, and learned that even in the darkest moments, rising above abuse was possible, and powerful. The holiday season arrived, and Amara felt a mix of excitement and nerves as she approached Lake Tanjiri Resort once again. This time she wasn't alone. Her mother walked beside her, and a few close friends followed, their laughter and chatter a comforting soundtrack. The memory of the slap, the humiliation, and the fear lingered briefly, but it no longer held power over her. She had faced it, overcome it, and now she was returning on her own terms. At the entrance, she noticed the staff waiting, warm smiles on their faces, ready to greet her. Guests glanced her way, some whispering, some smiling in recognition, but there was no tension, no judgment, only welcome. Bakery was nowhere in sight. The resort had barred him permanently, and the thought filled her with a quiet satisfaction. She had faced him, and now he couldn't touch her dignity again. As they walked through the sparkling halls, Amara felt the eyes of guests and staff on her, but instead of shame, she felt pride. Cameras flashed, capturing her radiant smile, the grace in her posture, the confidence that radiated from every step. She laughed easily with her mother and friends, enjoying the music, the lights, and the warmth of celebration. Every glance, every nod, every word of praise felt like a small victory, a reminder that she had reclaimed her life from fear and abuse. Some guests quietly approached her, complimenting her courage, asking how she had stayed strong. Amara smiled and shared bits of her story, knowing that every word could inspire someone else to stand up for themselves. Her heart swelled as she realized that what had once been a moment of pain had transformed into a symbol of strength, not just for her, but for everyone who had watched her rise. That night, as the celebration continued around her, Amara felt a deep sense of peace and empowerment. She had returned to the place that had once been a stage for her humiliation, and now it was a stage for her triumph. She had faced fear, spoken her truth, and inspired others to do the same. In the glow of the holiday lights, surrounded by laughter and warmth, Amara realized she had done more than reclaim her dignity. She had shown the world and herself that courage could shine brighter than any shame.